soon. Yes.
Very soon. She
Yes.
not only is a counselor and has worked with trauma students, and I know personally she worked in the school I worked in, and the students were very lucky to have her. She now has opened her own practice called Yes Counseling Service. So she has a lot of great information for you, and I can't wait to hear it. So quisiera presentar a Yesenia Guiliami.
Hola. Hi, everybody. It's so nice to see all of you. Thank you so much for joining this presentation. I'm going to speak to you guys from the point of view of both a counselor who worked at the school, as a mother, and also as an advocate. You know, I want to really hopefully leave you guys with the ideas of like, what can we do? I'm going to speak to you guys also from the perspective of my work at the school as a bilingual counselor, working with unaccompanied minors. And this is important for all of us because this is something that will ultimately affect us, our next generation of students, and I think it's going to have a lot of ripple effects throughout the next 10 years for sure. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. Let's see, desktop. Okay, bear with me a moment. Okay. So can everybody see that?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. All right. So first slide, basically the presentation is about helping ELL students find their way. Ayudando a los estudiantes de ELL buscar su camino. Había yo avisado que yo soy consejera y les estoy presentando esta información como madre, como consejera y también como una persona que trabajó adentro de la escuela por unos años y tuvo la oportunidad de entender muchas cosas del sistema. Y especialmente con los niños que vienen sin padres y que están aquí en nuestras escuelas y necesitando mucha ayuda. So when I first started, the school that I was working in had only about 155, 46 newcomer students. And then that number started to quickly grow. In 2019, there were over 40 students who were newcomers. So newcomers in the school are students who are arriving to the United States who do not speak English and are there to kind of, integrate into the school and to hopefully improve their English, graduate, and, they come with those hopes when they're newly registered. Then the numbers kept going up. We started at 40 and then suddenly there was 224. And then there were certainly, since I've left the district, there's over 1,000 bilingual students. So estoy avisando sobre, cómo los números de estudiantes crecieron desde el 2017 hasta el año pasado, en que los estudiantes bilingües en el distrito eran más de 1,000 estudiantes. Entonces, ¿qué hacen con todos estos niños? ¿Cómo son, integrated? How do we integrate these kids into the school system? That was my curiosity. And so I learned a lot about that. Unaccompanied children are our children. So we must look at them in this form in order to take ownership and accountability in helping. All of our children are going to be negatively affected if we don't. So, here are some numbers of, again, highlighting from 2014 onwards of, just the growing number of children that we are seeing. Comparatively, New Jersey and New York were pretty hand in hand, at the number of children that we're seeing in the districts. What does it mean to be unaccompanied? ¿Qué significa venir, sin padres a un país nuevo? Estar sin esa supervisión de un padre, sin tener esa conexión estar con familias que quizás es la primera vez que están conociendo, que es la primera vez que están conviviendo con personas. Son niños que vienen con mucho trauma, con muchos problemas que quizás en sus países nunca han recibido alguna ayuda o vienen con diferentes problemas médicos. Entonces, este es algo que de verdad nos debe de interesar a todos, cómo ayudar a estos niños, y cómo ver a estos niños como nuestros niños, no solamente un problema en la escuela, pero, niños que necesitan de nuestro apoyo y de nuestra ayuda. So I want to share with you guys a story that, hang on, let me just minimize my screen a little bit. Okay, yes, here it is. Okay. Esta es una historia de un niño que estaba en el periódico de New Jersey Star Ledger. Y estaba escrito en el 2021. As the number of unaccompanied minors rise at the border, New Jersey arrivals try to start a new life. Y este artículo fue, escrito por muchas llamadas, llamando a Monsi Monsi, tienes que hacer algo, tenemos que poner más atención a estos niños. Y entonces Monsi, coordinamos y ella pudo hablar con unos niños que yo conozco para dar más información a la comunidad de quién son estos niños, qué necesitan. Este niño que se presenta en este artículo se llama Darío. Vino de Honduras, vino solo, tenía 16 años y cruzó la frontera solo. Y estaba inscrito en la High School de Morristown, pero solamente duró un año, menos de un año. Y salió de la high school y vive solito ahora en un cuarto en Dover. So why should we care about Dario? Dario, 16-year-old from Honduras, who is who is already abandoned by a parent, who is living with new people, who is having all these family clashes, who only lasted less than a year before he dropped out and lives on his own in a room in Dover somewhere. The reason is obviously the humanity, caring about this student, caring about what happens to this young man now, I think is all of our concern. You know, And what he tells in his story is so true of what we're finding for ELL children, where they are pretty much invisible. They really don't have the connections, the care that they're really needing. And not just as unaccompanied minors, but ELL children in general. It was my impression at the school that I was working at. Dario says here, as far as I'm concerned, I don't have family, and what I need to do is stand up and continue to move forward. I mistakenly thought it was going to be different, that I would be supported by family and that I would receive support from other places, but it wasn't that way. And that's true. There's not a lot of support. It goes on to say, over 15,000 unaccompanied minors since 2014, which we looked at in the previous stats. Even though he was enrolled in a local high school and dreamed of going to college, like others, Dario has opted to work to pay back debts owing to relatives or smuggling operations that arranged his ability to come here. His quote is, "I dropped out of school because I had too many economic problems and I had no help from anybody." And yeah, this is true. This is the reality of what the children who are unaccompanied are facing. And if they're facing that, even children with parents who are ELL students are also facing that possibility of higher rates of dropping out. there's more to that article we can go back to. We can read the other story that was published there. But that's just a glimpse. That's a reality of what the situation is for our ELL students. So les voy a hablar un poquito de mi experiencia trabajando en la high school. Como les digo, yo trabajé por 3 años ahí y fue, como un experimento para ver qué fueron las necesidades de los niños. Cómo llegan, qué les pasa. Muchos de los niños cuando llegaban con un sobre amarillo, con sus datos, con su información, haciendo un examen de inglés para ver su nivel y normalmente ya se acabó. Entraban, si hacían bien, si hacían mal, ya era problema de ellos, cómo ellos cogían esta oportunidad o no. Y entonces para mí eso fue algo que a mí no me gustó. A mí yo empecé a ver mucha necesidad con los niños. The effects on the teachers, right? The effects on staff. So with this great need, right, I was just communicating how these students arrive with these manila envelopes with their information and really not much else, they weren't really sure how to use computers. They, different levels of education, different family situations, lots of issues that, walking in the door, these children came in with that really nobody's quite prepared to deal with at the schools. So what happens? So the children go into classrooms with teachers who are already very stressed, with teachers who are already limited on their own resources. So we have class sizes increasing, behavior management is more challenging, students are struggling academically and emotionally, there's gaps in education. The school nurse is also very overwhelmed, trying to just take care of these students' needs, reviewing their health documents, securing public health vaccines and information. So it is very challenging. On the school system itself, that's really not prepared to cope with this, to this influx. Guidance counselors in the school, they have limited options in trying to really help these students. They have to, and because again, there's not a lot of curriculums ready for these students either. There's really not a lot in place. So, at our school, we had 2 levels of placement, newcomer or level 1, and that was about it. So and if your student is also trying to learn English and is in the classroom that they really don't have the right scaling for, learning and taking in the language is that much harder. So most of the children came with no prior educational records. They didn't really have a lot of credits towards their diplomas. Some were over the age, and so you have different ages in classrooms and different developmental concerns that come up with that. I'll move on to the next slide. So the concerns for students. Student concerns range in severity. They begin with just the most basics. Like I said, students arrive with these manila folders and they arrive needing vaccines, needing some basic care. So they needed some help connecting with medical care. Some have untreated medical conditions. I saw a lot of children who had seizure disorders, heart problems, developmental disabilities, all kinds of things that again, the school was not prepared to cope with, and still isn't prepared to cope with. So who links them? Who helps them? Especially if they don't have parents, if they're depending on caregivers who, may not have the time to help them. So this is all problematic. And then it causes great stress on the child because they feel helpless in that situation, and great stress on, the staff at school. So as I move on, just with the medical, you can see how complicated that can become. A large majority of bilingual students and newcomer students qualify for free or reduced lunches. So these families have limited income. Some are single parent homes. Some are, some are not their children. So they're really not wanting to take care of them in that way. They want them to work. They want them to get out there. So these children come with now an additional barrier of lack of resources, of poverty, of language. So the list keeps getting higher and higher for these children. So, with limited supports, they're at higher risk of being trafficked. They're at higher risk of deportation. They're at higher risk of exploitation. So, all of these concerns just continue to mount up with our children. I'm trying to debate if I should translate all of that. Does anyone have any questions before I move forward, or any comments about kind of some of the information that I'm presenting, or can I present it in a different language? I wish I could. I wish I knew more languages, but I don't. In Spanish, does anyone need translation? Let me just check the chat. Okay.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on students that have interrupted education, that they're coming from their country and maybe they didn't finish a certain grade, and then they come here and they're being assessed, and let's say they're 11 years old now, and now they're being, so they didn't finish the 4th grade, and at 11 they should be in the 5th grade. What are your thoughts on that? Age-wise, I'm a teacher and I feel like age-wise they should be in the 5th grade, but with having so much interrupted education beforehand, what do you think about placing them in the 4th grade? I feel like there's a lot of developmental issues there, but what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think definitely I agree with you. There's a lot of developmental issues there. I don't disagree with the placing them sometimes in the lower grade just to give them an opportunity to catch up, and then maybe transitioning them over into the grade level that they need to be at, because I think that they'll gain an advantage of just, again, catching up culturally, catching up developmentally, and also giving the school a chance to understand what the needs are for this student. In some schools, they just don't have those resources to have someone really work with this student, to get them where they need to be. And then I think what's happening is that parents are unaware, or the caregiver is really unaware of what's being noted, because nobody's really sharing this information. And so the student kind of becomes invisible and just fits in where they can, and the show must go on. That's
Right.
was my experience with the school district.
Can you share your email in the chat room, please? Thank you.
Oh, yes, definitely. Okay, any other questions? Or does anybody, alguien necesita que yo repita algo en español? No? Okay. Okay, so vamos a continuar. So un problema que yo vi muy grande era los estudiantes que llegaban con más edad, que estaban en la situación en que no iban a poder completar la high school a tiempo. Entonces, estos niños que ya tenían más edad, de 18 a casi los 21 años en la escuela, tratando de coger lo más que puedan de la high school, entender, coger lo más del inglés y mejorar y aprovechar de esos años lo más posibles. El problema es que ya después de cierta edad, ya la escuela ya los sacaba, si cogieron lo que pudieran coger, pues bueno, pero si no, pues, ni modo, los dejaban ir. Entonces, y nada de las necesidades que ellos entran no las están asistiendo. So, hay muchos niños así que no pueden terminar la high school, que salen sin completar una educación que necesitan. Y entonces eso causa muchos problemas después para que ellos puedan, competir para trabajos, salir de pobreza, avanzar en esa forma. So what I was saying in Spanish is the aging out students, the issues for these students who are, between the ages of 18 to 21 coming to high schools, trying to finish an education and being dropped, once they are aged out of our system. And so what happens to these kids, right, without high school diplomas, their mobility in our culture, in our society is much more limited. And the likelihood that they'll stay in poverty increases. Another big concern for the students who are able to finish high school, there's not a lot of support for them to finish applications, to get applications out. These are students who need a lot more time. They are really unaware of our whole college system and process. And the guidance counselors are really not equipped to spend that much time because they are just overwhelmed with their own cases. It's not that they don't want to, it's that, they're trying to help 200 plus kids get into college sometimes, so really what I was seeing was a huge concern for, helping our ELL students get to college, get them what they need, increase their supports on all these applications and essays, and also educating the parents about the whole process here of education. I would tell the students, that high school was like a pizza, right? Um, it was just the dough cooked for a little bit of time. Anything else that they wanted to add to their life, to their pizza, they had to bring it in themselves, because the school was just going to provide the most basic for them. So, that they really needed to advocate for themselves and also talk to their parents about advocating for them. So, it was a grim kind of perspective when I started at the school, when I was really understanding what I was looking at with these children. Um, you know, so what can we do? Um, so I feel like there's so much opportunity in these situations with these children. I feel like we can rise by lifting others, and that there's so much that we can offer them. Um, So I want to really encourage parents to really advocate at their schools more, to advocate for the implementation of a counselor for ELL kids, a counselor for newcomer students, somebody who can work with them more individually to meet these unique needs that our bilingual children are coming with. Um, I started part-time and it quickly turned full-time. Um, and, part of my job there was, helping just register students, helping orient students, helping coordinate, helping them with the guidance department, being that person in between, um, you know, to help them navigate the system better. And I feel like without that in the school system, these children continue to be very lost, because they don't have that person that they can really get to know and really open up to and asking their questions and asking and providing a better understanding of, the kind what they're dealing with. Um, so, we definitely need more of that in the schools. And someone who's just really specialized to our bilingual, our newcomers, our ELL students. Um, we also need this person to be able to provide mental health counseling. Um, we need somebody who can work with administration, with guidance, who can do outreach, who can follow up with students, who can get involved when some of these other issues come up with, referrals, family involvement, if a child is coming in who's needing a 504 plan and, the family has no idea how to implement that, that can be very complex. And so we need somebody in the schools advocating for our bilingual children in this way. And again, the children are invisible to the district. The children are really not being seen. So, the less that they're being seen, the less need that the school has of, creating these positions or creating these opportunities for these children to receive more services. So the goals as a counselor that I was really looking at is to bridge with guidance to improve outcomes, right? Reduce truancy, reduce the dropout rate, provide linkage for aging out students, early intervention and supportive counseling, early recognition and provide teacher education to identify concerns, conducting group sessions as needed in a classroom, educating students on the availability of resources, and even observing and participating in classrooms as requested by, by teachers. I was often asked, Yesenia, can you sit in class, or can you give me an observation, or can you, watch, what's happening in the classroom? How can I manage it better? What I found is that the teachers were really, really needing their support as well, because sometimes these are very new situations for them as well, and probably not something that they've ever had to work with before. So, I think that advocating for a position like this at all of our schools is really, really fundamental in helping to coordinate success for bilingual students. So, as I had mentioned earlier, these unique needs that these children are coming with, they're often living with a relative or family member who they just met or have never lived with in their past. They have parents back home who they're needing to send money to because they owe these great debts for being brought over to the United States. I had many of the students who were very worried for their families back home, of really falling into severe harm if they didn't send money. And also, another thing that I discovered is that community referrals take a long time to connect. And so counselors have to be kind of that middle person to hold them, while we're waiting for supports to kick in for them. Sometimes that can take several weeks. And so we really do need a presence at the school to really help address these concerns. Does anyone have any questions as I move forward? Okay. So one thing that I also did notice is that relatives who have registered as sponsors for the children, a lot of them after a few months are like, you know what, I don't want to deal with a teenager. I don't want to do this. I have my own kids. I have my own family. This is way more than what I thought it was going to be. I don't want them. And that happened all the time. And so what happens to these children, because they fall outside of the realms of, DCP&P, they fall out of, they could be deported, so definitely having that rapport with families, understanding, if they are very overwhelmed with a child, they obviously need some more supports. Sometimes a lot of the families are, very hardworking, and so they really don't have the time to really cope with yet another child at the home. But there they are. And so helping to establish appropriate sponsors is not something that's been completed by the Department of Health and Human Services. In a lot of the cases that I saw, they would take anybody who would take these kids and just get them out. So not a lot of them had background checks done. Not a lot of them had, some of the basics completed. And I think because they were so overwhelmed in their own system of just trying to move these children out. So there's a lot of problems with the sponsors and the places where these children are being left. And so I just wanted to bring that to your awareness as well, because it's not all, oh, great, they have a sponsor. No, sometimes these sponsors really really are done with the children after a few months. And then there's really not a lot of additional supports for these children once they're in that situation. So the school is really the only place where these children have that sense of safety to be able to talk about what's happening to them. And we need them to talk about what's happening to them so that we can help them. So I'll go into, some of the intervention, but I mostly want to talk about parent engagement, because out of all of my time there at the school, the single most important part of this that was really missing was the parent engagement. And parent engagement is everything. Parent engagement was the #1 factor in really helping to stabilize children. Also advocating at the school district. And the only thing that really seemed to kind of bring awareness to the system, to the school system, that, yeah, we need to do more. Because without the parent engagement, the school is going to continue to do just the very bare minimum for our bilingual students. So, parent engagement is about being involved in a number of ways. So let me just move forward in that, because we all know the effects, right? If we don't become more involved, right? We have these children who are invisible, who have limited friendships, who have limited peer support. We have increased isolation, helplessness, hopelessness, psychological distress, and just maladjustment, and all kinds of issues, right? And then trying to get help for these children by the time they're in this amount of psychological distress is so much harder than if we are preventative from the beginning of their connection to the school. So let me just kind of go into, sorry, I'm jumping around a little bit. So, as we know, in New Jersey, the system of care for mental health is also very strained. The system of care in mental health, trying to find a bilingual counselor takes time. And so, I really want to encourage parents or anyone who is bringing a child to a new culture, to a new country. Yes, they need counseling. You don't need to wait for the psychological distress to start. You can also be preventative about it. So, as soon as your child arrives, along with their medical vaccinations, the next call should be, how can I connect my child to a counselor? Because that can be very, very efficient later, if issues come up, that will help the child in so many ways. So getting on wait lists, making those first calls. A guidance counselor, when you go to the school, is going to give you their very basic, again, let me just find what so the guidance counselor at the school is going to give you their very basic, oh yeah, call the National Suicide Prevention Hotline, call mobile response service, call crisis. And, so they're going to give you like the information for immediate crisis support. They're going to say, but they're not going to give you the preventative care. So, I want to encourage parents to really check out some of the other sites that are available. Sometimes just because the school gives us this, we think that that's the only place that we can really find help for our kids. And no, even if you don't have insurance, there are other resources that are important for you to tap into as a parent. I want to encourage everybody to consider, the website, psychologytoday.com. Psychologytoday.com is a wonderful place where you can find a therapist, right? You just enter in, let's see, just enter in the town. Oh, sorry. And you can see all these therapists that pop up. Even if you don't have insurance, The therapists will work with you, reach out, ask questions. I've found that another really big barrier to connecting to the school is something that is, what I call pena. Pena is like embarrassment. It's like a cultural kind of shame that we talked about in the last presentation as well. But it's a big cultural difference between parents born here and parents who are newly arriving, is this idea of pena, this idea of like, yeah, we don't really ask for help. And it's not so much asking for help, but it's advocating. We know that children who are coming to a new country need additional support. That is like, the most basic. So, losing this idea of pena, losing this idea of not bothering people, or I don't want to make a big deal, or I don't want that, I don't want to cause an issue at the school. I don't want them to have a harder time. Like, this is something that culturally we need to lose, and we need to lose quickly because it's really costing our children. It's really costing them the ability to really be as successful as they can be in these new settings. So, I think that is a critical piece to the advocacy part that I really want to stress to the parents listening today. I want to encourage you. I, as a mother, what I do with my children is, I'm at every parent back to school stuff. I'm emailing the teachers and introducing myself. I'm, making sure that I'm available. I meet with the principal. I want him to know who I am. I want to know who the vice principal is. I want to know who the guidance counselor is. I want to know as much as I can about this system that my children are going into. Who's in charge? Who are the players here? Who can I ask for help with? Who's going to reach out to me if they notice something? And the first line there are the teachers or the teachers' aides. I want to encourage parents to lose that pena and to really become more involved, because if you don't do it, nobody else will. And a parent's voice is the most powerful voice in this whole system. So, a parent coming to a meeting that they do, sometimes they have a bilingual PAC group, and showing up at those meetings and letting them know, no, this is what we need. We want somebody to be, a counselor for the bilingual kids. We want to know more about the curriculum. We want to know why, children who are at different levels in their education are not receiving more care. This matters even if your child is not in that situation. It matters because it will affect them. Help, these children need these connections. Do I know of any resources for Ukrainian refugee students? Not many. I do know that there are strong Ukrainian communities in New Jersey that may be able to offer a little bit more insight and resource. I also know that many of the hospital systems that do offer mental health do use telecom services where they can have a translator available. Pena is a word in Spanish, yes. Okay. And yes, and I hope that the majority listening are going to be parents, and that they understand, that it is up to them to really hopefully become much more involved in the school and how needed that is. Another great resource, that I wanted to also, of course, Zufall Medical Center, which is also expanding in New Jersey to provide more behavioral health care, is also another great resource. We are lucky that children, especially in New Jersey, even if they are undocumented, are eligible for health care. And so we want to connect these children. But again, these great opportunities that have come available, but how do you connect these children to it? How do we make sure that they know how to apply, how to get these services in place, how to connect them? They need that person to help guide them. And I think that can be done very effectively in the school system if there's more parent advocacy asking for it. Another great site, the Latino Mental Health Association is definitely another area in which, if you are a parent and you are looking for a Spanish-speaking counselor and you haven't been able to find one, reach out to the Latino Mental Health Association. Let them know, that you're needing help. The majority of the time, help is available. So a lot of bilingual counselors who are working in the field, can take a sliding scale if needed, or, work with a family to help get them established. This can be very helpful to prevent a lot of these issues. And also, if an issue does come up with social media, with all the things that our children are dealing with, that, they don't have to get sent out to these crisis centers where they can really have ongoing care with a counselor that they already are familiar with and connected to. Parent power, is about attending those meetings, requesting meetings with the teacher, with the guidance, getting to really know them, meeting people, as many people at the school, the principal, the vice principal, engaging in Board of Ed meetings, just making your presence known is really, really powerful. Asking for bilingual counselor positions to be created, to be funded, to be supported, asking questions, finding out why are they doing things like this? And you'll find out a lot of the time because that's how they've always done things and they don't want to change. And our circumstances now require flexibility and change in our school districts. I encourage you to meet your superintendent. Who is this man or woman who's running the school? Do they know that you've been advocating, that you've been meeting people, that you have a student at their school who needs more support, that they have many students that are bilingual that need more support? What is their plan? By asking these questions, we help to bring visibility to our children. Participating with local community organizations, I feel that's a hugely important piece as well. Wind of the Spirit and other organizations that are really out there advocating for the community, and not just the Spanish-speaking community, but the community in general, because again, this affects all of us, regardless of the language that we speak. As a newcomer or bilingual students, we need to increase the visibility. Let me just check the chat again. As parents who are here, what resources are there? How do we know when our children need help? They need help. You don't need to to question that anymore. We have to go with the assumption of, yes, our children do need help. They are managing a new system that's highly stressed and that doesn't have the resources or support that they need. So, I want parents to make the assumption of, yes, I need to jump in here now. They need these preventative helps now. I know there might be limited financial resources to support programs to help unaccompanied children, but it is a wake-up call that we as parents do more for these children, even bringing it up to, yes, absolutely. We need to wake up our system that we're working with here in our school districts of hey, these children exist and we need to do more. School system has, lots of resources, and how they apply those resources, without parents being involved, it'll go someplace else. So, if they are more aware of the need, they can do more. And again, these children disappear. Like I was sharing with you guys in this article, this student Dario, he just, what they declare as transferred out. They don't document them as dropped out. They document them as transferred out. And so we don't know how many children have been dropped out of this system. We may never know, but I can tell you it's a lot. And when you have that level of dropout in a community, it affects all of us. So time is 11:51. Certainly open to any questions you may have. Okay. And just to go back to kind of is there
Ya le chica, no me importa, porque le hice un hoyo. No,
okay, can we mute? ¿Hay alguna pregunta? No? Okay. So with the time we have left, I'll just kind of go down into this other student who, Damaris, 18, an immigrant from El Salvador, living with his sister. And in this article, she does talk about her journey, a lot of the local gangs, pointing guns at her head, demanding money, and so these children are coming to our schools with an immense amount of trauma. They wanted her to sell drugs. They wanted $5,000. If she didn't pay, it's a hard life for her mom back home. And so, a lot of the families have been very separated. Some came before the children come, some haven't lived with their, family members for a long time. And so, a lot of these children are just sitting in these classrooms trying to deal with all of this all by themselves. And it is very traumatic for them. It affects their ability to really connect, to talk about what's going on in their lives. It is, really scary things that children that are coming unaccompanied are bringing to us, and again, I think it's an opportunity for us to really help them and to really, by helping them, we help ourselves, we help our own humanity, and it really will have very beneficial effects for all of us in the future. So this is why I want to share this presentation with you, is not just these kids, but that they're our kids, and it affects all bilingual children, to really, by creating more supports for our bilingual community, really can affect such positive change later for us all. This particular student, Damaris, is in Long Branch. So it's really every county in New Jersey that, has received students. Let me just check my slides. Okay. And yeah, I think that's what I have for you guys today. Let me just check the chat one more time. Okay, what county or district has the most unaccompanied children? Currently, the stats are showing us, and in the article, I think the most that we've had, let me just see if Monty spent some time on that, because I think it's every county in New Jersey has been affected in terms of their numbers have increased significantly. New Jersey and New York are, one of the two states that have had the largest surges of children coming to stay. So let's see. Here in this piece, so Bergen County, here are some stats for Bergen County. And you can see 2019. And we don't have the most recent stats, but we do know that these children are in our districts, are definitely, let's see, Passaic County, Essex County, Morris County, and I'll just show you Hudson and Union counties. Yeah, so Hudson has a large number, and Union County. Okay, so this affects us statewide. This children who came in last year, the number of children coming in this year. So this is going to be an ongoing opportunity for us to really advocate for all of our bilingual children. I think it gives us good data to work with and really great opportunity to encourage our school districts to do a lot more for our children, especially the bilingual children. And so I think out of the counties, Union County and Essex and Morris are probably our bigger communities at this time. Okay, and yes, and I'm just going to put my email in the chat. Okay, so if anybody has any questions or, would like more information, please do reach out. Definitely going to be spending a lot of my year this year advocating as much as I can, following my dissertation to, continue to encourage districts to do more. And there are a lot of great organizations that are also fighting the good fight. So, the more that parents can connect with community resources, the better, for sure. It helps give more voice to what we're needing to do. Yeah, thank you, everybody. It was such a pleasure to talk with all of you. And again, if you have any further questions, please don't hesitate in reaching out. If you're struggling with trying to find a counselor for a student, or if you need some other resources, I'm happy to help with that as well. There's so many resources available to children, but it's just having someone at the school to have the time to connect them to really help hold their hand through some of this so that they can really, really take advantage of all the wonderful resources that are available.
Thank you so much, Jasenia. You have so many resources, and parents need them very badly. And thank you for your advocacy.